Time has softened these images, but not their stories. Fame fades, whispers remain. Every frame hides something forgotten. This is Velvet Screen Secrets. Each day I bring you a new story about Hollywood's golden age and the stars who defined it. Carol Burnett, the woman who once lit up American living rooms with her warm smile and razor-sharp humor, was long crowned Hollywood's kindest lady. For decades, she carried herself with grace, laughter, and that soft charm everyone trusted. But after years of staying quiet, she finally cracked the door open, and what came out stunned people everywhere. Now in her 90s, during a rare Rolling Stone interview, Burnett did something nobody expected. She openly spoke about the men she hated most in her life.
Oh, yeah. It was, I was a freshman at UCLA, and I was in the theater arts department. And at the end of that first semester, I got an award for the most outstanding newcomer.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
What made the shock hit harder was this. These weren't random enemies or industry rivals. These were the men closest to her world, the ones who had real power over her heart and career. One betrayed her through an affair and then tried to grab control of what they built together. Another allegedly used his influence to block her from the SNL stage for over 50 years. And then there was a much younger man who turned her likeness into a joke in a sensitive scene, pushing Burnett to fight back in court. So the question became impossible to ignore. Who were these men who left such deep scars on an American television legend? And out of all of them, who crossed the one line she could never forgive? The first name on that list is Joe Hamilton, the ex-husband who cheated and then demanded control over their shared assets. What many fans never realized is that behind the bright lights of the Carol Burnett show was a marriage quietly falling apart. That iconic show, a pillar of American TV history, was built while a relationship slowly cracked under pressure. Carol Burnett and Joe Hamilton were once praised as CBS's golden couple, the pair bringing laughter into millions of homes. On the surface, everything looked perfect, but behind closed doors, the laughter faded, replaced by cold silences that spoke louder than jokes ever could. Their story began in 1960. Burnett was a rising actress on The Gary Moore Show, while Hamilton was already an experienced producer with credits from The Steve Allen Show and The Colgate Comedy Hour. Nearly 10 years older, Hamilton came off calm, polished, and worldly, a man who knew the business inside and out. They met during a CBS taping in New York. Burnett later wrote in her memoir that he looked at her in a way that made her feel truly seen and valued. 3 years later, they married in a small California ceremony, surrounded by close friends and industry insiders. When the Carol Burnett Show launched in 1967, Hamilton stepped in as the man running everything behind the scenes. He wasn't just the producer, he was her advisor, her creative partner, and the person shaping every segment alongside her. For years, they moved like a unit, Burnett bringing heart and emotion, Hamilton building structure and control. But when success grows massive, power can quietly tilt the balance. According to longtime costume designer Bob Mackie, things shifted around 1975. Hamilton began tightening his grip on the show's creative direction. He demanded approval over guest lists and scripts before Burnett even saw them. During one tense production meeting, Hamilton reportedly pushed to cut emotional segments, saying the show should focus only on laughs, arguing that the show could focus on straightforward laughs. Burnett didn't back down for a second. She pushed back hard, believing audiences needed heart and warmth just as much as humor. That disagreement wasn't small. It was the first crack in a wall that would soon collapse. From that moment on, tension followed them everywhere, and the stress from work only made things worse. As pressure piled up, Hamilton started spending less time at home, drifting further away from the life they built together. At first, Burnett gave him the benefit of the doubt. She believed he was chasing new television partnerships and expanding professional connections, but that explanation didn't last long. Whispers began floating through the industry, and they weren't subtle. In August 1979, TV Guide dropped a short but loaded note. It mentioned a veteran producer involved in a private relationship inside an editing room in Los Angeles. No names were printed, but insiders didn't need them. People in the business knew exactly who it pointed to. Crew members later said that during this time, Hamilton was often seen with a young CBS editor. The two were regularly spotted at the Smokehouse, a popular restaurant near the studio. Still, Burnett stayed silent, at least publicly. According to her close friend and co-star Vicki Lawrence, everything changed one day when Burnett overheard crew members discussing Hamilton's overly familiar behavior with the young woman. That's when Burnett finally broke down in tears. The real breaking point hit in 1982. While reviewing financial documents, Burnett's lawyer uncovered something disturbing. Hamilton had secretly formed a separate company called Hamilton Productions in Beverly Hills. Even worse, he had quietly registered copyrights for 2 television projects pulled directly from their show. One of them was Mama's Family, a spin-off based on one of Carol Burnett's most beloved sketches. Her name was nowhere in the contractual credits. That omission hit like a slap to the face, and for Burnett, it was the final straw. She confronted her husband head-on, refusing to stay silent any longer. According to the biography Laughing Till It Hurts, the confrontation happened inside their shared CBS Television City office, the very place where so much success had been built. Carol looked at him and asked, "Do you think it's fair to turn what we created together into something that belongs only to you?" The question wasn't emotional, it was direct, grounded, and honest. Hamilton didn't hesitate. His response was ice cold. "This is business, Carol, not emotion." That single sentence crushed whatever hope remained. In that moment, the partnership, personal and professional, was done. On March 3, 1983, Burnett officially filed for divorce in Los Angeles County Court. The Los Angeles Times reported it quietly in the Hollywood Notes section with a plain headline, "Carol Burnett and Joe Hamilton separate." Simple words, massive fallout. Behind that short notice was one of the most complicated asset battles television had ever seen. Hamilton demanded full control of all production rights, including profits tied to the Carol Burnett Show and its related projects. Burnett pushed back hard, insisting on a fair 50-50 split and full ownership of the brand name she helped build. The legal fight dragged on for nearly a year. Reporters from People, Variety, and USA Today camped outside the courthouse daily. A source close to the case said Burnett stayed calm and steady throughout the hearings. Hamilton, on the other hand, looked worn down and tense, and the two barely exchanged glances. In June 1984, the judge finally ruled. Burnett kept the rights to the show's name, while Hamilton received 40% of the syndication profits. When asked how she felt afterward, Burnett gave a tired smile and said, "We used to be the best team until the day he forgot that I wasn't just a partner." That remark exploded across the media. It landed on the cover of People magazine and was echoed again and again on television talk shows nationwide. After the divorce, Burnett made a clean break, pulling herself away from every project still tied to Hamilton's control. Hamilton continued producing a handful of smaller programs, but the magic was gone. None ever came close to the success they once shared. In 1991, Hamilton passed away from heart disease in Los Angeles. Burnett did not attend the funeral. Instead, she sent a white floral arrangement with a handwritten note that said, "I wish you peace, Joe. As for me, I will keep going." A short message, but one heavy with meaning, and everything left unresolved. Years later, during a quiet conversation at the Paley Center for Media, Burnett reflected on their past with calm honesty. She said softly, "Joe taught me that in this business, love alone is never enough. Trust is what truly matters." That lesson stayed with her. Now comes the second man, Harvey Korman, and the on-set blowup that shocked American television in the 1970s. This was an era when laughter meant ratings, and ratings meant serious money. The Carol Burnett Show wasn't just successful, it was an untouchable empire.
At the heart of that success were two performers who seemed perfectly matched. Burnett was the emotional core, while Corman was the spark that sent audiences into fits of laughter every weekend. Together, they looked unstoppable. But behind the polished sketches, behind the perfect timing and glowing studio lights, trouble was brewing. An unseen storm was forming, one powerful enough to shatter a friendship that had lasted nearly 10 years. By 1974, as the show entered their 7th season, everything looked flawless on paper. Ratings were soaring, the time slot was locked down, CBS extended the contract for 3 more years, and the team had just earned their 4th Emmy. But that peak marked the beginning of quiet fractures, cracks only visible to those working closest to the production. Longtime costume designer Bob Mackie later recalled that during this period, Harvey Korman had grown irritable and quick-tempered. He became distant and tense, and even avoided Carol backstage, a shift that didn't go unnoticed. Whispers began spreading fast. Some claimed Corman felt intense pressure after receiving a solo nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy. Others believed he feared being overshadowed by a female co-star who was adored across Hollywood. Whatever the cause, the tension kept building until it finally exploded. One April afternoon inside Studio 33 at Television City in Los Angeles, everything boiled over. The cast was rehearsing an episode featuring guest star Petula Clark, who had just flown in from London. Suddenly, a backstage lighting issue left Corman's face stuck in shadow. That small technical glitch pushed him over the edge. Without hesitation, he stopped mid-scene, threw his script onto the floor, and shouted, "After all these years and you still can't get this right." The room went dead silent. Director Dave Powers stepped in, trying to calm him down, but it only made things worse. Corman kept going. He turned and complained loudly, adding that not even Carol seems to care. That line cut straight through the room. Carol, who had been watching quietly from the empty audience seats, felt it hit deep. She stood up, walked calmly toward the stage, and didn't raise her voice once. Looking directly at him, she said slowly and clearly, "Harvey, I've had all I can take. If you can't respect the people here, you don't need to be here anymore." According to Bob Mackie, the studio froze. In the silence, the sound of a microphone hitting the floor echoed across the stage. Corman stared at Carol for several long seconds, then turned and walked out. No one followed him. No one said a word. Later that afternoon, a cameraman recalled seeing Carol remain alone on the soundstage for over half an hour. She stood there staring at Corman's empty chair before quietly telling the director, "I didn't want it to end like this, but he pushed it too far." Just hours later, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner ran the headline, "Harvey Korman walks off Carol Burnett show during rehearsal." CBS refused to comment, but the story spread fast. Reporters from Variety suggested Burnett had finally reached her limit, and this time she wasn't backing down. After months of tension with Corman, the next 3 days felt endless. Hollywood buzzed non-stop, and everyone was talking. Close friends of Burnett, including Vicki Lawrence, tried reaching out to Corman, but he stayed completely silent. Burnett, meanwhile, showed up to the studio every day like clockwork, refusing to address the situation. One technical crew member later said she seemed calm, almost too calm, but behind that steady composure, the exhaustion was obvious. Everyone could see it in her eyes.
Then, on Wednesday morning, the phone rang inside the CBS office. It was Harvey Korman. He told the assistant, "I need to talk to Carol." When Burnett picked up, his voice wasn't steady. "I was wrong. I want to come back." The words hung heavy in the air. The next day, Korman walked into the morning production meeting. The room went completely quiet. No one moved, no one breathed. He apologized to the entire staff first, then turned directly to Burnett and said, "I forgot why I started doing this in the first place." Burnett smiled. She walked over and embraced him. The studio broke into applause, but those who witnessed the moment knew the truth. The crack was still there, and it wasn't disappearing. Corman stayed with the show until 1977, then left quietly without drama. Burnett kept in touch, but the friendship was never the same. In a 1983 Entertainment Tonight interview, when asked about him, Burnett simply said, "Harvey made me laugh more than anyone, and he also gave me the biggest headaches." The incident became known among television insiders as the Studio 33 blow-up, one of CBS's most infamous behind-the-scenes clashes. Writers later pointed to it as a clear reminder of how fragile relationships can be when two stars reach the top at the same time. Deeply connected, easily bruised by pride. When the storm finally passed, Burnett came out stronger, sharper, and far more guarded. She stopped letting emotion bleed into business. But the turbulence in Carol Burnett's life wasn't over yet, and what came next would cut even deeper. The third name on this list stunned people the most. It was none other than Marlon Brando. Hollywood is packed with stories that sound like pure rumor at first, but the deeper you dig, the more unsettlingly real they become, sometimes even stranger than anything a screenwriter could dream up. And one of the most unbelievable stories of all involved Carol Burnett, the undisputed queen of CBS television, and Marlon Brando, the global icon who had just shaken cinema with The Godfather in 1972. It happened on a quiet summer night in July 1972. Los Angeles sat in near silence, with only a few lights glowing along the Coldwater Canyon hillside, where Burnett lived in a warm wooden home with her two young daughters. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., the phone rang. The housekeeper, thinking it had to be an emergency from CBS, rushed to wake Burnett. Still half asleep, Burnett picked up the phone, only to snap fully awake when she heard a deep, slow male voice on the other end. "Carol, it's me, Marlon Brando." At first, Burnett assumed it had to be a prank, but when the caller casually mentioned a rerun of the Carol Burnett show he had just finished watching on CBS, she instantly realized this was no joke. It really was Brando. Years later, in a conversation with journalist Dick Cavett, Burnett recalled that Brando praised her work, telling her he admired how she made audiences believe in her characters. He admitted he never expected television to carry that level of emotional depth. Burnett smiled, thanked him politely, and assumed the call was about to end. It didn't. The conversation stretched past 30 minutes. Brando began talking freely about filmmaking, Hollywood, and his belief that television didn't have enough women like her. As the minutes passed, his voice grew slower, lower, more deliberate. A few jokes slipped in, jokes that made Burnett uncomfortable. Later, Burnett reflected, "I realized I wasn't speaking to any of Brando's roles. I was talking to the real man." She described him as charming and intelligent, but also dangerous in a way that set off alarms. As Brando continued extending the call, layering his praise with increasingly suggestive remarks, Burnett knew the line had been crossed. Calm but firm, she finally cut in, determined to shut the conversation down before it went any further. Still polite but completely firm, Burnett finally cut in. "Mr. Brando, I truly appreciate what you're saying, but it's very late. I have an early taping tomorrow." With that, she hung up, convinced the situation was finished and would fade away quietly. She was wrong. By midday, Hollywood was buzzing like a shaken hive. The Hollywood Reporter had already splashed a headline across the industry. "Marlon Brando stays up all night calling Carol Burnett." The story spread fast and loud. Just 2 days later, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner piled on with an even more provocative title, "Brando Seeking Inspiration from CBS's Queen of Comedy." Famous columnists like Luella Parsons and Rona Barrett added fuel, claiming the call lasted over an hour and describing Brando's tone as openly flirtatious. The rumors exploded so quickly that CBS was forced to step in. The network released an official statement confirming the call was strictly personal and had nothing to do with work. Burnett was furious. She demanded the network's PR team shut the gossip down immediately, but the damage was already done. An anonymous insider later claimed Brando tried calling again a few days later. This time, Burnett didn't answer the phone. She had drawn a clear line. In a 1991 interview with Burnett's close friend, Vicki Lawrence, revealed just how shaken Burnett had been. She was embarrassed, angry, and deeply worried that her private life would be twisted into something ugly. Burnett feared audiences would misunderstand her character and intentions. During a tense lunch at Musso and Frank Grill, Burnett finally vented to her friend, saying with frustration, he crossed the line.
"I cannot believe Marlon Brando thinks calling a woman at 3 a.m. is normal." From that night forward, Burnett made a quiet but firm decision. She would never see him again. At public events, she went out of her way to avoid him. During the 1974 American Film Institute Awards, cameras caught Burnett deliberately shifting positions to avoid sharing the same frame with Brando. When he unexpectedly appeared on the red carpet, she immediately turned and walked the other way. To reporters, it looked like coincidence, but inside the industry, everyone understood it was intentional. From that point on, Burnett's PR team added a discreet line to her monthly schedules: "Do not attend events where Brando is present." The public never saw that note, but a former CBS employee later confirmed in the book Hollywood Inside Out that Burnett consistently avoided any venue where Brando might appear. Brando never addressed the incident publicly. However, people close to him later claimed he half-joked about it, saying, "Carol takes things too seriously. I was just talking." That comment only made things worse. To many, it reinforced Brando's reputation for arrogance and his belief that boundaries didn't apply to him. For Burnett, the incident wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a harsh wake-up call. It reshaped how she viewed trust in the entertainment world. After that night, she became noticeably more guarded in her interactions with male colleagues. One crew member from the show's later seasons recalled something telling. Burnett never answered the phone after midnight again, not even for emergency calls from CBS. The line had been drawn and it was permanent. And yet, as painful as that moment was, the harshest blow in Carol Burnett's life still hadn't arrived. What wounded Burnett the deepest didn't come from a private moment or a late-night call. It came as public humiliation, right in the heart of Hollywood, in front of hundreds of guests, and it involved Lorne Michaels, the man Burnett would later accuse of belittling women and quietly keeping her off Saturday Night Live. In American television history, there's a story that's been whispered for decades, an unresolved mystery stretching nearly half a century. Carol Burnett, the trailblazer who opened the door for female-led comedy on television, was never invited to host SNL. Not once. Given her status, the silence felt intentional. To understand why, you have to rewind to 1975, the year Saturday Night Live first aired from Studio 8H inside Rockefeller Plaza in New York. At the time, The Carol Burnett Show was entering its 8th season on CBS and still dominated ratings nationwide. Burnett represented warmth, humanity, and emotional comedy. Lorne Michaels, meanwhile, was building something entirely different, sharp, political, satirical, and sometimes brutally cold. From the show's earliest episodes, critics began connecting the dots. Harriet Van Horn of the New York Post openly suggested Burnett should appear on SNL to bridge 2 generations of comedy. What sounded like praise quietly became the spark for decades of silence. Inside NBC, sources later revealed that Burnett was briefly discussed as a potential guest during SNL's 2nd season around 1976. But according to insiders, Lorne Michaels personally crossed her name off the list, stating that she didn't fit the spirit of the show. Those words echoed years later. In the book Live from New York, published by Back Bay Books in 2002, an editor recalled Michaels saying during a meeting, "She belongs to old television. We're creating something new." The story stayed buried until journalist Tom Shales reignited it in a 1981 Washington Post article. And once it resurfaced, people began asking the question no one wanted to answer. Why was Carol Burnett deliberately kept out? And was it really about comedy or something much deeper? Carol Burnett had shown interest in appearing on SNL more than once, yet each time NBC responded with nothing. No call, no explanation, just silence. When Tom Shale's article hit, the reaction was immediate and explosive. Hundreds of letters flooded NBC, demanding to know why America's top female comedian was being ignored. A week later, the network finally responded with a carefully worded statement. They claimed guest invitations depended on the tone and content of each season. Few people bought it. Carol Burnett herself never publicly asked to be invited, but during a late 1980s Larry King interview, the truth slipped through. When asked directly about SNL, Burnett smiled gently, paused, and delivered a line that landed hard. Half joke, half truth, she said, "Maybe I'm not lethal enough for them." The audience laughed, but the sting in her voice was impossible to miss. People who worked closely with Michaels said he had a rigid vision for the SNL brand. He wanted the show young, rebellious, sharply sarcastic, and aggressively edgy, the complete opposite of Burnett's warmth and emotional style. One former editor, speaking anonymously to Rolling Stone in 1990, revealed that Michaels had even turned down a major sponsor's request to feature Burnett during the 10th anniversary episode. According to that editor, Michaels reportedly said, "We respect her, but that's not our kind of comedy." Though never officially documented, the remark was widely believed to confirm what many had suspected for years. As time passed, the distance between them never closed. In 1993, both Burnett and Michaels were scheduled speakers at the Television Academy Honors in Los Angeles. Attendees, including New York Times reporter Bill Carter, later recalled a moment that spoke volumes.
When Burnett took the stage, the entire room rose in a standing ovation. Minutes later, when the host introduced Lorne Michaels, Burnett remained seated, offering only a faint smile while looking straight into the camera. That moment didn't disappear. It was replayed again and again on Entertainment Tonight, with viewers calling it the coldest stare Hollywood had ever seen. For years, the story simmered quietly, until 2023 reignited everything. NBC produced a tribute titled Carol Burnett, 90 Years of Laughter and Love. During an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Burnett was asked the question people had wondered about for decades. Did she regret never being invited to host Saturday Night Live? She smiled kindly. Then came the answer that rocked the media world. "I guess they didn't need me, and I didn't need them either." With that single sentence, Burnett closed the door on nearly 50 years of silence. Social media erupted instantly. The hashtag #InviteCarol to SNL spread at lightning speed. Within 24 hours, thousands of fans flooded platforms, urging NBC to finally correct history and give Burnett her moment. When asked again during a later panel at the Paley Center for Media, Burnett didn't raise her voice or sound bitter. She simply said, "Some people don't realize that kindness has its own kind of strength." The room went quiet. From that point on, Burnett stepped back even further from modern variety shows. She chose to protect her legacy rather than chase relevance, preserving the classic image audiences had loved for generations. But fate wasn't done with her yet. Soon, she would find herself drawn into another collaboration, this time with a man she had once deeply admired. What started with promise would quickly spiral into one of the most shocking chapters of her life yet. One of the most painful professional disappointments of Burnett's entire career came from a man few expected, Cary Grant. In 1968, Hollywood was soaked in glamour, overloaded with champagne parties, massive egos, and non-stop applause. That same year, The Carol Burnett Show had exploded into a full-blown phenomenon, dominating the Emmys and pushing Burnett straight to the top of American television. Cary Grant, the symbol of old-school Hollywood elegance, was being honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Two legends, two generations, two completely different styles. It should have been nothing more than a polite handshake and a respectful smile. Instead, one careless remark shattered everything.
The gala took place inside the International Ballroom at the Beverly Hilton, packed wall to wall with Hollywood royalty. Lucille Ball, Gregory Peck, Elizabeth Taylor, Jack Lemmon. Burnett arrived glowing in a deep red gown designed especially for her by Bob Mackie, moving through the room with confidence and grace. When the ceremony wrapped, she lifted her champagne glass and approached Grant's table to congratulate him. According to film critic Roger Ebert, who was present that night, the mood shifted the moment Burnett stepped closer. A director seated beside Grant, clearly trying to ease the tension, spoke up and said, "Have you seen Carol's show? The whole country's obsessed with it." Grant responded with a slight curl of his lips. His voice stayed low, but the sarcasm was sharp enough to cut. "That show, the kind of comedy where you flail your arms, make faces, exaggerate every emotion. I honestly don't understand why people enjoy that." The words dropped into the ballroom like a shockwave. A few guests let out nervous laughs, others froze where they stood. The air went stiff. Burnett didn't explode. She didn't clap back loudly. She kept her smile perfectly in place, but her eyes changed. The warmth dimmed. Calm and controlled, she responded softly, just loud enough for Grant to hear. A moment so restrained, yet so powerful, that everyone nearby knew something irreversible had just happened. Maybe audiences prefer laughing with real people instead of perfect characters. The line landed hard. Silence swallowed the entire table. Burnett gave a polite nod, then walked away, leaving Grant frozen behind an uneasy smile. Hollywood never forgets moments like that. Just 2 days later, the Los Angeles Times slipped a brief item into its entertainment section titled "Cary Grant and Carol Burnett, a Cold Encounter at the Beverly Hilton." The wording stayed restrained, but the meaning was clear. Grant had looked down on Burnett's mainstream comedy style. The story spread fast. Some insiders rushed to Grant's defense, claiming he was just joking. But television audiences, especially women, were furious. CBS felt the heat immediately. The network's communications department issued a carefully crafted statement affirming that Carol Burnett represented humane and intelligent humor, grounded in empathy, not silliness. Grant's name wasn't mentioned, but no one missed the target. Burnett stayed silent. She didn't clap back or chase headlines. Grant, however, made things worse during a private interview with Variety reporter Art Silverman. When asked about American television comedy, he replied, "I prefer more sophisticated humor, something closer to European style. Television now is too loud. Everyone is trying too hard to be funny." He never named Burnett, but Hollywood didn't need subtitles. Tabloids ran wild, inflating the story with claims that Grant had once told Burnett she was cheapening comedy. No proof ever surfaced, but the damage was already done. Letters poured into CBS throughout November 1968, more than double the usual volume. The majority voiced support for Burnett, praising her authenticity and warmth. And Burnett's response? Absolute class.
She didn't retaliate. She didn't give interviews. She kept working and winning. That same year, The Carol Burnett Show reached its highest ratings ever, proving that laughter rooted in sincerity spoke louder than any insult ever could. Burnett didn't retreat. She doubled down. She invited her close friend Lucille Ball, another comedy powerhouse, to appear in a special episode of her show. Later, Lucille shared that Burnett told her, "The best answer is to let them turn on the TV and still see us there." It was classic Carol, calm, confident, and unshaken. Still, Burnett never forgot that night at the Beverly Hilton. In 1970, Paramount Pictures invited her to co-star with Cary Grant in a musical film. On paper, it looked like a prestige pairing. Burnett declined, citing scheduling conflicts, but someone from the production team later revealed the real reason. Privately, Burnett said, "I won't work with someone who belittles women's laughter." The line was drawn, and she never crossed it. As for Grant, he never apologized publicly and never revisited the incident. Yet in Graham McCann's biography, Cary Grant, A Class Apart, the author noted something revealing. Grant once admitted, "Carol is so smart and strong that she made me feel uneasy. a quiet confession that said more than any apology ever could. Ironically, Grant's disdain only fueled Burnett's fire. She leaned even harder into what she believed in, bringing everyday people onto television screens. Homemakers, seamstresses, maids, ordinary people filled with heart and humor. She made them visible, and audiences loved her for it. Over the next 3 years, Burnett won 3 consecutive Emmy Awards. The Carol Burnett Show was later named one of the greatest American television programs by TV Guide. In that moment, Burnett learned something vital. Sometimes words aren't necessary. Success speaks the loudest. Yet the irony was impossible to ignore. The more successful Burnett became, the more she seemed to unsettle powerful men in Hollywood. And that brings us to the 6th name on this list, Dick Van Dyke, the man who once criticized the Carol Burnett Show for being bland and too feminine. The year 1977 had barely begun when Burnett's world shifted again. The Carol Burnett Show entered the turbulent transition. Harvey Korman, her longtime on-screen partner and the spark behind countless sketches, suddenly departed. After 10 wildly successful seasons, CBS scrambled to fill an enormous void. To them, only one name carried enough weight to steady the ship: Dick Van Dyke, the beloved icon from Mary Poppins and The Dick Van Dyke Show. Hollywood buzzed instantly. On August 15, 1977, the Los Angeles Times ran a hopeful headline: a dream collaboration, 2 American TV legends to share the same stage. CBS wasted no time, launching an aggressive promo campaign. Posters flooded Los Angeles, showing Van Dyke and Burnett smiling side by side, selling the idea of television magic. That bright optimism didn't last long. Within weeks, the smiles faded, replaced by backstage friction viewers never saw. From the very first rehearsal at CBS Television City, the contrast between the 2 stars was impossible to ignore. Van Dyke leaned heavily into a Broadway-style approach: slower pacing, carefully measured delivery, and theatrical emphasis. Burnett, shaped by live television, demanded speed, spontaneity, and rapid-fire exchanges. Writer Bob Ellison later recalled in his book Television Tales, on day 1, Dick asked to rewrite lines because he felt they didn't match his rhythm. Burnett just smiled, but the tension was immediate. 2 weeks later, during a run-through with a test audience, things boiled over. Van Dyke suddenly stopped mid-performance, lifted his script, and addressed the director directly. "I think this bit is too soft, just girly lines with no real comedic punch." The studio went dead silent. Burnett, standing just a few steps away, glanced at him briefly, then quietly walked backstage. Ellison later said the reaction said everything. No anger, no outburst, just hurt. He wrote, "She wasn't mad, she was genuinely sad." Rumors spread fast. TV Guide soon published a piece titled "Tension Brewing on the Burnett Set," quoting an anonymous source who described the pairing as a dream team turned generational collision. CBS tried to shut the chatter down, but inside the industry, it was obvious the 2 stars had stopped speaking outside of work. By mid-October 1977, the conflict reached its breaking point. During another rehearsal, with Lucille Ball sitting in the audience, Van Dyke stopped again and muttered, "I just can't get people to laugh at this featherlight comedy." Lucille Ball later told People magazine that Burnett turned to her, forced a tight smile, and whispered, "I think I chose the wrong person." The following week, Van Dyke failed to show up for a scheduled taping. No warning, no explanation. CBS scrambled, reworked the script, and Burnett reshot major scenes with her original team. The network released a short statement saying Van Dyke left due to personal scheduling reasons. But according to Bob Mackey, the truth behind his exit was far different and far painful. According to Bob Mackey, Van Dyke later confided to the writing staff, "I can't work in a place where everything is driven by emotions." The comment traveled fast behind the scenes. Later that year, during a New York press conference, Van Dyke spoke to a Chicago Tribune reporter, trying to sound diplomatic. "I admire Carol, but our styles differ. I prefer comedy built on structure, while her show feels too light. On its own, the remark seemed harmless, but once Variety reprinted it, the meaning shifted, and many read it as a clear insult. Burnett's fans reacted instantly.
Hundreds of protest letters flooded CBS, defending her work and demanding accountability. Burnett, however, refused to escalate the situation. In an interview with the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, she smiled calmly and said, "I've always believed laughter has no gender. It's only divided into what's honest and what isn't." The message was unmistakable. She was done talking about it. Van Dyke remained with the show for only 6 episodes before quietly stepping away. That season ended with less fanfare than any before it. When CBS produced the Carol Burnett 10th anniversary special in 1980, Van Dyke's name was noticeably missing from the guest list. Viewers who once expected his return took notice. Within the industry, it was seen as Burnett's subtle way of saying the wound from that period had never fully healed. Yet even after that chapter closed, the turbulence around her career was far from over. Nearly 2 decades later, a bold and controversial young creator would pull Burnett into an entirely different kind of battle, one fought not on a soundstage, but in a courtroom. That man was Seth MacFarlane, the mastermind behind Family Guy. In 2007, television entered an era where the line between satire and insult grew dangerously thin. Shows like South Park and Family Guy ruled the airwaves with humor that spared no one. MacFarlane was praised as a boundary pusher, but his most explosive controversy targeted one of America's most respected icons, Carol Burnett. It began quietly. On April 23, 2006, a Family Guy episode titled Pete Erotica aired on Fox, and what followed would trigger one of the most talked-about legal battles in television history. Inside that episode was a scene that lasted only seconds. No dialogue, no music, no warning. Yet it stunned millions of viewers watching at home. A background character appeared wearing a blue maid's uniform, a headscarf, and holding a mop, an image unmistakably similar to Charwoman, the beloved character Burnett had portrayed more than 200 times on The Carol Burnett Show. But this wasn't the Charwoman audiences remembered. In Family Guy, the character was placed in a context that many viewers found disrespectful and inappropriate. The character no longer symbolized dignity, resilience, or warmth, qualities Burnett had carefully built over decades. That very night, Fox's viewer feedback line lit up. By morning, Variety and The Hollywood Reporter were running stories condemning the moment as a reckless misstep. Older audiences, especially those who had grown up watching Burnett on CBS, saw it as a stain on the legacy of American television. Meanwhile, in Santa Monica, Burnett, then 73 years old, received a call from her former manager, Joe Hamilton Jr., alerting her to what had aired. According to assistant Jill Saperstein and People magazine, Burnett listened quietly for a long moment before responding. Charwoman is not a joke. She's a piece of the audience's soul. Few people expected what would come next. Less than a year later, the incident exploded into one of Hollywood's most talked-about legal battles. On April 16, 2007, Burnett officially filed suit against Seth MacFarlane and 20th Century Fox Television in federal court in Los Angeles. The complaint stretched over 20 pages and signed by attorney Richard Bush, known for representing high-profile clients. It accused Fox of infringing on a protected character and damaging an artist's reputation. Burnett sought $2 million in damages, a modest sum by Hollywood standards, but one carrying enormous symbolic weight. The press jumped on the case instantly. Headlines branded it a clash between 2 eras of American comedy. CNN covered it on the evening news, while the Los Angeles Times published a full commentary asking a pointed question: can the freedom to satirize override collective memory? Several critics publicly sided with Burnett. Entertainment Weekly's Ken Tucker wrote, "This isn't just about Carol. This is the line between art and disrespect." His words echoed across the industry. Younger audiences, especially fans of Family Guy, rushed to defend Seth MacFarlane. They argued comedy should have no limits and that satire must remain absolute. The divide was sharp, emotional, and impossible to ignore. The first court hearing took place on June 14, 2007, in the United States District Court for the Central District of California. Judge Dean D. Pregerson presided. Burnett did not attend in person, but submitted a recorded video statement from her home. In the video, her voice was calm, steady, and slightly raspy. She said, "I am not suing for money. I simply want to remind people that some characters belong to the hearts of the audience, not to anyone else." The room reportedly went silent. Fox responded aggressively. McFarlane's legal team argued the scene was clearly a parody, protected under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. McFarlane appeared composed, confident, and unapologetic. In a post-hearing interview with the New York Times, he said, "I grew up watching her. I thought she would understand that every iconic figure can inspire the next generation."
That comment only intensified the firestorm. USA Today published an editorial titled, "Even Laughter Needs Limits," arguing McFarlane had confused admiration with appropriation. The Los Angeles Times closed one commentary with a line that cut straight through the noise, a sentence that perfectly captured the weight of the moment and the question hanging over all of Hollywood. There are memories, even those stored in archives, that must be treated with gratitude. That line echoed through commentary as the case reached its conclusion. On July 3, 2007, Judge Pregerson dismissed the lawsuit, ruling that the scene qualified as fair use under parody protections. The legal battle ended, but the controversy didn't. Burnett chose not to appeal. In a brief interview with NBC, she said simply, "I have said everything I needed to say in the way I felt was right. No bitterness, no follow-up, just closure on her terms." Public sentiment leaned heavily in her favor. In an end-of-year Entertainment Weekly survey, 68% of respondents said Burnett did the right thing. A veteran Variety critic summed it up perfectly. She did not win in court, but she won in the hearts of the audience. McFarlane, meanwhile, stayed firm. During Family Guy's 20th anniversary celebration in 2019, a reporter asked if he regretted anything from the controversy. He replied flatly, "I have never regretted a single episode." The comment reignited debate among Burnett's supporters, proving the wound still lingered. But the moment Hollywood remembers most came 4 years earlier, at CBS's 70th anniversary celebration in 2011, held at the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles. Burnett and McFarlane were seated in the same row. When the television camera swept across the audience, Burnett sat upright, calm and composed, wearing a gentle smile. Just behind her, McFarlane leaned forward slightly and offered a polite nod. Burnett didn't react. She didn't look back. She didn't flinch. She simply clapped softly along with the music, dignified, unbothered, unshaken. And if this journey through Carol Burnett's life and the hidden shadows behind her legendary smile has left you stunned, then one truth becomes impossible to deny. Some icons don't need the final word. Their legacy already speaks louder than anything else ever could. If this story left you shocked, emotional, or questioning everything you thought you knew, let us know. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and tell us honestly, who do you believe hurt Carol Burnett the most? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Hit that notification bell so you never miss what comes next. Because here on Velvet Screen Secrets, we dig beyond the spotlight, uncovering the untold backstage stories, the hidden power plays, the quiet betrayals, and the silent pain buried behind Hollywood's brightest smiles. We'll see you in the next episode.